Right. I'll tell you a little bit about what I'm thinking this day and age about how the whole UMOSRAS program is going and what it entails and what it basically is structured by, um, and what the eventuality should be when UMOSRAS becomes a reality. Um, it's been a 20-year program, all in all, since I embarked on the first Odyssey on my Sierra conversion, I suppose, the monolith conversion, which started me off on my creative pathway. And it's been a fulfilling time. It's been something I've been obviously trying to reward to other people as well, the same experience, by setting up the Sierra Academy and getting people to study the same method that I undertook in order to become my practitioner on my own system, on my own services. And that's my thinking behind setting up Sierra in the first place, which has been a great project and is basically the overall umbrella in the sort of formation of business practices as they develop in the system. So it's an education program, and it forms the student into someone who is able to manage and direct their own project, um, and puts them through 6 stages, which develop them into being, an entrepreneur and someone who can develop their own systems to connect other people who are involved with their project to the Sierra Academy, and therefore thereby develop them to become seniors within their own company or practice. That's the overall reaching ambition of Sierra, and my whole experience will be opened up to everyone else who goes through the program. So I was the guinea pig on Sierra, if you like, and I'm pretty well satisfied that it's worked well and has taught me the right life lessons and has shown me basically how I need to behave in order to function as someone who is becoming an entrepreneur and setting up my own business, to include other people and to recruit candidates for it. So that's Sierra, which is a development program. Now, UMOSRAS didn't come first of all in the last 10 years, I suppose, out of the 3 companies I constructed, Sierra being the one I've just outlined. Space TM is actually a company that comes from the SAFCOM's remit, which I started out on my website, benatelier.ucos.com, which basically outlined security phenomena that was concerning me at the time. I had a large amount of, say, pleroma around me, spiritual power, if you like, that I couldn't quite harness and develop into my own system, and it became like a security threat in many ways. It felt like everything that I was accessing, other people were able to access, and I had no privacy of my own. So for that reason, I set up SAFCOMs Limited to construct a system whereby the generosity of the pleroma, the generosity of the spirit, was metered and privileged out through the network to share with a large amount of people who I deemed worthy of receiving the privilege and having the right security level access to what I was doing and what I was viewing at the time. Remember, I was setting up my own company, and I didn't particularly want other people doing copycat enterprises at the same time as I developed my program. And although my program is very individual and original, and quite difficult to copy because of um, the magnitude of the task basically ahead of me, a lot of people are going to find it, spin-offs from this project, which is, partly why, as the security develops, it became harder and harder to create spin-offs as the higher levels develop. And it's at the lower levels that the ideas come to people. So it's probably correct that certain, ideas were leaked out through the system to enable other people to start developing their own projects as their own entrepreneurial idea to develop at the academy. So that was the primary phase of laying down the security was SAFCOMS Limited, which develops in Space TM, which is conveyed as if through the ether, basically through a system of what I call the light web and the torsion sockets and the whole duality of space on Earth program that represents the reality of the security that we have out in the universe already, and the communications infrastructure and everything, the enhancement process of improving media and that sort of thing. This was all farmed. My intent with Space TM was to farm this out through, communications equipment that is either equipped with DNS or phone cards that have SIM cards removed and are able to access the facility of the sort of the escalation of the federal information processing systems, which although it's not anything to do with that now, it's moved through a system which I use that term lightly. Federal information processing systems was a method by which I was able to access off-world phenomena through settings on a Windows XP computer. And gradually, as this developed, I broke away from using the FIPS network and started to run my own proxy server and DNS server and set up the whole link method through getting people to access my phenomena directly through my server. The whole moving through this whole process of using the existing legal infrastructure, I suppose, what's there in front of you, becomes something of pushing for the ceiling and breaking through this crystal ceiling, which is the fifth dimension, and turning it into something that can actually access anywhere on the planet and bring about everything Space TM proposes to offer to the candidates who require such phenomena. So Space TM developed basically between UMOSRAS was between SAFCOMS and Space TM. So as I was developing the academy and UMOSRAS, after having set up the SAFCOMS website in the first place, I started to design UMOSRAS. It had been something in the back of my mind for a few years by the time I started to put pen to paper and write the description of what UMOSRAS actually is, and what the whole process of laying out and distributing, sharing the rights to the creation that I'd set up, the previous 10 years before I embarked on these projects. But UMOSRAS was written in various different formats. I started off with interface programming, just using web-based methods to program the infrastructure. And also, originally, before that started, I actually started to program through my mobile telephone to set up the SAFCOMS infrastructure and just literally repeating the mantra of doing this sort of rudimentary programming. Eventually, as you throw enough mud against the wall, it started to stick, if you know what I mean. So it's like particle physics, the same thing. You start to observe things, and the more you observe it, the more people become aware of it, the more phenomena starts to happen with it. And as I sort of moved into the UMOSRAS sphere of creation, I came up. I was sort of given a method of using as a runic programming script that it's very unscientific, but it became more scientific in its nature, and I started to see the logic in it and the way it developed through the interface programming that I was using. And gradually I started to record this. I started to get command files like Cygwin and eventually Termux. I started to record some of the details that I put into this program format. I hadn't just lost it into the ether. which ultimately I didn't lose anything to either, because I created symbolic links and physical links that connected up all the previous interface programming and grouping up all the clustering of this programming through the right networks and the IANA networks. I was able to redistribute this creation through the locality of where I live, through actually what I actually started to set up in a more standard programming language that I developed and created through using my server and the computer and the more scientific side of the whole process, which has probably only just been the last 2 or 3 years, but that's been fairly non-stop work, which has applied enough work, as far as I can see at the moment, to set up to the next phase, which should be the cyber-dimensional escalated creation, which is turning the reality of everything I'd done before into the physicality of UMOSRAS, and the zone of Glasgow-Ramsby. So this process that's basically how UMOSRAS came into being. It was a synthesization process. I had all this creation around me. I had no way of managing it. I had to get it into the cyber world and the communications world, and then develop it through a systematic programming method, which eventually culminated in the only thing I can equate it to is logarithms that I use currently, which are more in line, like algorithms. They're more, it's just a sort of logic that dots the i's and crosses the t's, if you like, with the final method of putting everything in place that I'd synthesized through the interim process. So that's the method of creating UMOSRAS, and everything is functional in all my visions that I, to begin with, is just visions in this living in this pleroma of all the things that were going to happen in the future. And everything I realized had a purpose and a reason. Everything was satisfactory at the end of viewing it. I saw how it panned out. I saw how the reality was going to become, and I was happy with the result. And I saw that it had a purpose. Everything had a purpose. Everything's there for a reason in the platform, and in the future platforms. As we move up the ladder towards the higher levels. But I consolidate principally on ENA in the first location of the universal realms, and develop the whole process of having done the architecture through this runic script, which I did endless programming on, sort of couple of hours a night, just laying down loads and loads of architecture into the system through this runic structure. Gradually, as I developed into synthesizing it into the finer process, it became more structured through the technology that was going to be purveyed through the system. So, using the existing communication systems and using my arm of SAFCOMs and SpaceTM, I was able to infiltrate the system and start to develop a hotbed for making the reality of the cyber-dimensional escalator creation come to light. And so, as a security phenomenon started to become a reality, I started to realize that I had to purvey some of this technology that I'd scripted, the archaeology and everything else. The architecture and the natural world and everything else that was going to change and become the shape and the reality that UMOSRAS proposes to offer. So that's basically how the three work hand in hand. If you look at it in terms of Sierra being the academy that has developed me, the academy program, and SpaceTM being the security remit, the communications infrastructure that I so desired in order to privatize myself, then UMOSRAS is the golden nugget. That's like the practice, the reality, my business, I suppose, if you like. You could call it, it could be run like a corporation or a business. And the reality of it is that, with the other two in place, it's possible to develop yourself into an entrepreneur and make yourself, boss of your own system, so that you're able to put in place something for, as many people as you want to share it with. And, sky's the limit. I always believe the bigger you dream, the more things will happen anyway. If you set your heart on very limited amount of things in your local sphere, you come up with one idea, you patent it, and then you make lots of money from patenting one idea. It's a very limited reality in view of how far your ambition should go. And it's my view: the more ambitious and the more open-minded and the more open to future realities and changing the world and making an impact on the world, the bigger the dream. If not all of it happens, if not everything you want happens the way you want it to, or things like that, at least you'll have tried and you've started something that's moved into the new spheres of the universal direction, or the organizational direction, as we move away from the existing legal infrastructure. So that's what those three systems, actually, including UMOSRAS, because UMOSRAS is the showpiece, I suppose, for other people who seniorize on the system. So taking those three systems in place, those three websites and those three companies, if you like, or two companies, which two of them are UMOSRAS and SpaceGem is SAFCOM, but it doesn't really matter. The three partitions to the reality can all be used for each student, each candidate who wants to develop themselves into a practitioner and turn their reality into something much more futuristic and better for the world. Breaking the crystal ceiling in every direction possible. And if it becomes a tried and tested format, and if as much of the reality as what I propose to offer and believe I am generating for the world happens, or as much of it as possible happens, then that's fantastic. We can move on to the next level of bringing other people up to sort of flesh out the reality of UMOSRAS initially, and then ultimately create their own practices elsewhere in the Commonwealth of around the world. That's the plan for the academy, and that's basically the long term plan. Moving up the levels, up the ladder. As you got the higher realms, there'll be more and more need to create a larger Commonwealth and bigger areas. Just fleshing these ideas out to begin with, and getting the infrastructure and the technology in the right place, and then ultimately moving to the next levels and creating the practices and the locations as we see fit. Okay, thanks very much.